Back Monday morning, the weekend was kind of a bust. I didn't get any work done on either dissertation or the Alice project, but I feel a lot more refreshed now and a bit more sort of happier in myself, so I think I am good to go. I set myself a goal today of cutting out the collar pieces because I wanted to get the bodice finished as soon as I could. Because once I've got the bodice in a position where I'm happy with it, I can properly start pleating down the skirt and cracking on with the petticoat as well. So it's just like one extra thing that's out of the way. I set some goals, so I wanted to get the collar sewn together. I wanted to sew the collar to the bodice, work on the petticoat recipe, and cut out the net for the base layer of the petty. I didn't get all of that done because I spoke to Nikki from Student Services about my dissertation, but also about like project management, and she suggested that I try and break down my the weeks leading up to the soft deadline, and try and set some goals that I can stick to, as opposed to having a very vague a vague idea of what I need to do, but not actually having a solid idea. So I've tried having a calendar in the past where I've written down deadlines and where I am on a certain day, or what I want to get done that day, but it doesn't seem to stick very well. I think it's too much all at once. And I've tried using a app called Nosebee, which is an organizer project management app, but I just also don't really get on with it either. So I'm going to give this a go and see how it works. I'm going to message her, send her an email at the end of the week to sort of let her know how it's going on. And if it doesn't, then we can figure it out and change things around. But as it stands at the minute, the deadline for the soft deadline for this project is on March the 4th, I think. I'm fairly certain. But I want to make sure that I've got as much as I can physically get done by that point, so that firstly I have a completed project to show for the presentation, but also so that I don't have anything running into the next project and slowing me down for that, because that's going to take a lot of time and planning, and I really want to be able to focus solely on that while I'm when I'm working on it. So I've got it. So week 1 I wanted to get the main dress together, so that's this week. So that means putting the collar on the bodice, getting the skirt pleated with the ruffles on, getting the sleeves drafted and sewn up, and the apron sewn and attached. Second week will be the petticoat and bloomers, so I'll get the bloomers made up, and then I will focus on getting the petticoat done. And then week 3 would be to finish making the petticoat, doing final adjustments, and then the week 4, the week of hand-in, I've got the Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to do final adjustments, sort out photo shoots, do hooks and bars, and also start research for the third costume as well. Rachel pointed out to me today a problem with trying to get the main dress together this week, because she pointed out, and it's something I've been peripherally aware of throughout this whole project, that the amount of fabric in the skirt is going to be very, very heavy, and unless I have a lot of structure in the petticoat, it's going to be difficult to stop it from collapsing on itself. So she liked the idea of my the nylon thread. She said I should speak to who should I speak to? Eleanor, I think, to ask her about how she did it, because I think she worked with a friend of Rachel's also making petticoats, but they used they use fishing wire or something in the sewing machine itself, in the bobbin. I don't think that's going to work for mine because it's quite thick, so it might just jam the machine and get confused, so I might not do that. But I think I'm also going to put a boning channel in layer 3 just in case, or one of the layer 3s, because even if I don't end up using boning, it allows for boning later on. So petticoats collapse over time, they tend to sort of compress, they lose a lot of the bounce, so it would be good for any future adjustments or alterations, or future wear, just longevity of the petticoat, if there was an option for boning channels. So I think I will do that. I will put them in layer 3 and potentially one in the final layer, but I'm still worried about the swing, so I might need to think about that, but it would be an option. So I think I'll probably do that with should I do that with net or with ribbon? I might do it with ribbon. I'll have to see. But yeah, so that's an option. We also spoke about ribbon edging and stuff. So Becky has done ribbon edging on her petticoat, and it looks really, really gorgeous. But it is the issue of time. And at the minute, from now I've got my new schedule, time is looking quite short. I'm quite pressed for time, so I will keep the ribbon casing in mind, because it would also mean that I could put another layer of the sort of fishing wire in at the hem. I could hide it in the ribbon casing and it would look better, look neat, which it might possibly need potentially, but we will have to see. So yeah, and we also spoke about the puffed sleeves. So she was saying about Rachel was saying about having an inner sleeve with a reasonable size gusset as well, that the net would be sewn into to puff it out with, which is what I had been planning to do anyway, but I had not really thought about the gusset idea, which I think would be wise to do, because although my performer is not my performer is not expected to be like flailing around too much, because it's an opera. There's still, movement would still be good, and the less strain put on the outfit, the better. I also kind of went through my updated design. So because I've decided to use the black lace for the bow at the collar, I kind of want to put some more black details in to tie everything together, because it's going to look a bit odd if it's just like one black bow at the collar. So my new sort of updated design has black lace around the like the top of the pockets, around the sleeves. I could maybe put some on the bloomers as well, and then like using the rest of the black lace around the bow for like little bows around the hem of the skirt. So I think I need to get some more black lace in a slightly thinner width, but I still want to keep the sort of like chunky effect. The only thing that I am worried about with that is that obviously I would have to pre-wash everything, because as soon as I sew black lace onto white fabric, there is a chance that the dye will run, so I need to keep that seriously in mind. And I do have some dye fix at home, so what I might do this weekend is I'm going home anyway for Valentine's Day, but I could go to Fabricland, pick up the lace I need, and then treat it with the dye fix to hopefully stop any dye bleed. So that is something I will think about, but it also means that I want to finalise a proper design illustration so that I know exactly what I'm doing. I can try out what I can like test out the colour combinations of like lace and everything before I start buying lace, so it'll be a bit more like economical money wise, but also just like planning in general would be better. Because at the minute I've sort of been just making up as I go, which is not very conducive to firstly saving money, but also just like project management in general. So yeah, Rachel's going back to the petticoat, Rachel also said about it's ideally a project should be started from the undergarments and worked up, which is why I am starting to have troubles with the petticoats, because I didn't start with the petticoat, I started with the dress. Which, to be honest, I can kind of still justify, because the dress is very heavy, so even if I spent a long time on the petticoat, putting the dress that I want over the top of it does not necessarily mean that I don't have to stop, like, I'd still have to work back into the petticoat anyway, so I would rather get a feel for it this way around than the other way around. But That is something I'm just going to have to figure out as I go. But Rachel suggested on Wednesday because we were at Purfleet, going into the stores and picking up a bunch of petticoats from the stores and then using those as a base to pleat the skirt onto the bodice, because then that would give me an idea of the fullness needed. Firstly, it would help me with the skirt itself, but also secondly, it would help with figuring out how many layers of knit I would need for the petticoat in the first place. So that will help me plan that a bit better. That does mean that I want the ruffle pleated and sewn onto the skirt before then, so I will probably be doing that tomorrow. But yeah, I think for tonight I need to do some more dissertation work and I need to have a go at my folder work. But I might see about starting to pleat that the ruffle down so that I have it in a pleated strip, so that I can get a better idea of like how much I need to sew to the skirt base. Oh yes, I also had some more lace arrive. So it's one of the wider ones that I ordered. It's incredibly wide, but I really like it and I really want to use it. So I was thinking I could put it on top of the ruffle going around the bottom of the skirt, because I should have enough for it, and it would add a little bit of more sort of texture down there. I think I'm going to pin it on to start with and see how it looks with the rest of the blue skirt, but I'm quite inclined to use it. The only trouble is that it seems to be like woven as a sheet of fabric, so it has a limited width and it has a selvage, which does make it easier for me to sew together, but it is a bit annoying that I have like 3 strips of 3 meters or something, or however long it is, that I need to then sew together, because it's going to be seam allowances. But if I'm clever, I might be able to hide those in the box pleats of the ruffles, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue, but it's still a little bit annoying. So yes, I finished sewing today. I also did the collar pieces, so I finished the collar pieces. I used the satin that I had picked up for, I can't even remember what I picked it up for now. I think it was like a backup for the bow, but so it's quite a stiff satin. It's almost like plasticky, but it's still quite nice. So I made the collar out of that, and I'm going to make the sort of cummerbund waistband with it as well. It's like a bit of contrast. So I have the lace that I was using, the sort of like very thin lace. It has that sort of, it was a pre-gathered lace, and it had that like very fine net sort of covering the selvage edge, which I found was going to be too bulky for the collar, because I wanted to trap it in between the 2 layers. So I took that off, but then obviously all the pleating came out, so I pleated it again with a little bit more gather to it, which worked okay. And I did that through, I got some buttonhole thread, and I zigzagged over it along the edge, and then I could pull that quite easily. And it worked a lot better than just trying to like using long stitches and gathering it that way. It didn't catch as much, so that worked really, really well. And then I also pinned it to the one half of the collar piece first, and then sewed like a few millimeters away from the stitch line, so it's got an extra line of stitching in, firstly just to hold it in place while I'm sewing the collar piece together, but also so that it doesn't it has a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for, a little bit more strength to it when it's sewn in. So because I had to trim the seam allowance back really, really, really far, it just means that the lace isn't just going to unravel in places and like pull out. So they are now both sewn together. They are like turned inside out, pressed, and they're really, really good. I didn't manage to sew them to the bodice today though, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I kind of want to do the chunky stitching around the collar edge. Firstly, just to like definitely hold everything in place, keep them like flat and nice, but also just because I really like the big stitching and I want to incorporate it somewhere, so I'll probably have it on the collar piece and the apron. So I'm thinking a blue colour to sort of match the fabric of the main dress. I did consider using black, but I think there's going to be a lot of black going on, so I'm not quite sure yet. I might do maybe a little sample just to see how I feel about it, but otherwise I'm just sort of happy to use like a matching colour. So I will probably do that tonight just so that I know that it's done. And also it means that that's definitely done, and then tomorrow I can sew the collar onto the bodice and not worry about like having to go back in with threads and everything. I also cut out the apron bib as well, which was the other thing on my list. So for the list for today, I have managed to hit the 2 things I wanted to do, so I'm quite pleased with that. So the apron I've decided to cut out as 2 layers, like 2 double layers of the cotton again, just because it's I didn't want there to be like it's quite translucent when it's just two layers, and I didn't want the seam allowances being shown on the inside, so I just figured it was easier to do it that way. The iron did leave a lot of like fluff and like a bit of melty stuff on it though, so I didn't finish ironing the 2 sides. I want to make sure that there's no like black threads or fluff or anything trapped between the layers, because otherwise it's going to show up really, really badly. But yeah, I think it's good to go, so I will probably be sewing that tomorrow as well. The only other thing I have maybe thought of is like putting lace along that as well, but then also there's a lot of lace going on, so I might just leave the apron plain. If I didn't, I would need to get some more lace, so I need to have a think about what I want to do with that and see what looks best. That might be another reason to go to Fabricland, so I will think about it. But yeah,